I'm here with Steve Bannon at the Future of News conference in New York. Steve, you're very positive about American economic growth. We might see up to 4% this year, but you're concerned about debt. Do you think that there's a chance or a risk of another global financial crisis based on the huge sums owing by the United States at the moment?
Look, it's concerned me since 2008. We haven't solved for the problem in the first financial crisis. I mean, we've had zero interest rates. You can take any old economic, Samuelson's book and throw it out. We have negative interest rates. That's
moving upwards.
It is, but that's no playbook. Here, we had this massive tax cut, which I understand why we had to do it because of competitiveness with Germany and China. However, it is a $1.5 trillion tax cut. On top of that, at the time, I don't ever remember people saying we're going to come back and have a $4.3 trillion spending plan for 2 years. Now, it looks like even with the growth that we're talking about, and I think, yeah, you could get over 4% growth, we're still running up these massive deficits. And I've been a huge supporter, in fact, was one of the driving forces with Peter Navarro and Stephen Miller and others in the White House with President Trump to outline for him the set of tariffs, what we have to do to combat China. But I find it very ironic on the day that we're actually signing the 301, we're basically
the trade tariffs.
The trade tariffs.
Aluminium and steel.
Well, the steel and tariffs and those are, I think, kind of a separate. These 301s are really about forced technology trade, and they're significant. This is where it's going to be $50 or $60 billion. And this is going to the heart of the problem with their appropriating, not stealing, but taking our technology for market access. At the same day that we're doing that, which is an appropriate action, I think President Trump may even be tougher and go higher.
Do you think we're going to have a trade war then, a real trade war between the U.S. and China?
I don't think
that would really shake markets.
I don't think it will be a trade war. I think that China, what President Trump keeps saying, the phrase he uses is reciprocal. Reciprocal. What he wants and what American industry wants is a fair shake by China. What they can't do is force our companies to give them our technology in order to get market access. That's what the 301 is all about. But on the same day that we do that, Lionel, they pass a spending bill of $4.3 trillion that's going to have, I think, trillion-dollar deficits as far as the eye can see. Now, China is the financier of last resort for those deficits. So I think that I believe that the permanent political class in Washington, and hopefully if President Trump keeps hammering at the swamp down there, is really got to set up, I think, potentially for another financial crisis down the road.
Now let's turn to President Trump, the administration. You worked right next to him as a chief strategist at the White House. Then you left. He's shaken up his team again. Gary Cohn left. Secretary of State Tillerson left. You think that we're going to see even further moves and a different style, or maybe a reversion to the slightly organized chaos style of the first 6 months?
Well, maybe I think we're going back even more than that. I think President Trump now has his sea legs. I think he feels increasingly confident every day. I think you can see that. I believe he's going to go to a model that Jack Kennedy had. I don't believe...
What, with just 5 or 6 close aides?
Yeah, 5 or 6 people that directly report to him. I don't think you'll see another chief of staff. I think when General Kelly decides to leave or President Trump has decided that it's a time, I think you're going to go back to...
General Kelly's only been in there for a few months.
Well, chief of staffs, it's at the pleasure of it's at the pleasure of the president. I believe you're seeing even right now that President Trump feels more comfortable with what I would call a Trump Tower style, where you had 5 or 6 aides, the OMB, NEC, NSC, the comms person. There's only about 6 or 7 people that really have to see the president every day to make the place function. And I think you're going to go back, like Jack Kennedy didn't have a chief of staff. I think you're going to go to a model. I predict you're going to go to a model where you don't have a chief of staff.
Now, you've just come back from Europe. You've given a couple of important speeches, as well as some controversial appearances. You were next to Marine Le Pen, the French nationalist.
Why would she be controversial? She almost won the French presidency.
Well, because she's rewritten French history regarding the deportation of Jews in 1940. That's one reason.
I gave a speech in Zurich. I was in Italy. I went over as an observer to see the Italian elections. Almost 2/3 of the Italian people voted anti-establishment, right, to reject the existing political parties. I was asked to come up and give a speech at Front National's annual conference and to talk about that movement in the rest of Europe and in the United States and throughout parts of Asia, that these people were not alone, that this populist nationalist surge that we're seeing, this anti-establishment surge, is just not limited to Front National in France, and that's what I gave the speech on.
Steve Bannon, weaponizer of ideas, thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.